Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, what we are going for is a Halloween theme. In fact, we will be for the next few videos, because frankly, it's the best time of year, and I won't hear otherwise. I just won't have it. Right, so actually, here, give me a second. That's better. To set the scene for this old video, I want to take you to early October 2009, on a sleepy little village in New Hampshire. There lay a remote homestead, sitting quietly among the fall leaves and rain, which is never too far away. I can't film the whole video in a screen mask, you won't be able to understand me. And there, in that remote house in autumnal New England, 4 teens would break in with trill on the minds and evil in the acts. Let's give it a go! The quiet, remote, sleepy town of Mont Vernon, our home for the day, lies in southern New Hampshire, home to roughly 2,500 people. It's fairly remote, not much going on really in the town, and it's surrounded by forests, farms, and hidden houses. Let's not beat around the bush. In this one, let's get to the point, the starting point, which is the early hours of Sunday, the 4th of October, 2009. During those dark hours, the ground was wet from the previous day's rain, and 4 people walked across a lawn towards the front door of 4 Trow Road. There lay a house with just 2 people sleeping inside as the 4 approached that dark night. They didn't have a dog, they didn't have an alarm, nothing to warn them of what was coming. Not at all. Because they weren't coming with kindness, on the mind. The 4 who arrived were 17-year-old Stephen Spader, 19-year-old Christopher Gribble, 17-year-old Quinn Glover, and 18-year-old William Marks. The 4 had been friends for some time, having been drawn together by their pretty dark interests, namely serial killers, horrorcore music, and cults. Sounds familiar. To seem even more like hardcore, Quinn had even told them he had killed people before. Look at you! And Stephen would say he was in a gang, so you best not mess with a big dog. Well, now they had their own little gang. Stephen Spader was the leader, and they called themselves the Disciples of Destruction. Their goal was mayhem. Some people just want to see the world burn. Did they wear the Joker makeup too? They had picked this particular house at 4 Trow Road as their target about a week before as they were driving around. It was their target for what they would, intended to do. See, their hope was to just burglarize the house, right? Steal a load of shit, teens looking for a trill. But if there was somebody there, well, they had a plan for that too. And the plan would get a shit ton darker. All 4 arrived armed with an axe, knives, a machete, a lot of weapons. William Marks and Quinn Glover, they were hoping to just break in, steal some shit, for a rush, while Stephen Spader and Christopher Gribble were hoping that people would be home because they just wanted to kill people for the heck of it. They wanted to know what it felt like. Off to a good start here. It was the basement window they tried first. Christopher, he crawled to the damp ground, cut the screen, and then tried to push the window in, but it broke. And so William Marks, being the smallest, 5'3", 97 pounds, he crawled through but found himself locked in the basement. They were determined, though. They wouldn't let anything stop them from getting into that house and doing the devil's work. It was through another window where the aircon was vented. They removed some parts of it, and Stephen Spader managed to get in, and then he let the others in through the front door. He opened the basement door so William could come into the house. Then they went to the circuit breaker and cut the power. They used an iPod that was found lying around to guide them through that house. When all 4 were together, they started walking towards the master bedroom, and Stephen Spader, he peered in, and he saw someone lying there in the darkness. He saw someone under the covers. He whispered back to the other 3, saying there's somebody in there, but they misheard him. they thought he said, "There's nobody here." So they started talking loudly, which woke up the person who was sleeping. In that dark house, a female voice said, "Jamie, is that you?" Stephen then walked towards the bed. He whipped out his machete and he started slashing. Christopher, who also had a knife, he joined in. That was 42-year-old Kimberly Cates, a devoted mother and wife and nurse, and she was known as a lovely, lovely, sweet person. She didn't have a hope. Neither did Kimberly's 11-year-old daughter, Jamie, who was also in the room. Kimberly's scream woke her up, and Christopher went straight for her, stabbing Jamie in the face and the lungs. Then he tried stabbing her in the heart, and threw her at a sliding glass door. Kimberly, in the meantime, had a pillow over her face and was being stabbed in the neck and the chest. William and Quinn watched as this went on. After a time, when the silence rang out, they wanted to see what they had done. They went back to the circuit breaker, they turned the power back on, and it was a bloodbath. No two ways about it. The four then grabbed some valuables, jewellery, wallet, a few other small items, and fled the house, back to the car where they changed their blood-drenched clothes and shoes and drove off. Well, if that isn't a nightmare, I'm not too sure what is. But what happened next was just as shocking, because at 4:15 a.m. a 911 call was made. It was Jaime Cates. She managed to call. She wasn't dead.
What is your emergency? Hello. Somebody did wrong with my... Somebody did wrong to the house. Stay on the line while I transfer you to the Mont Vernon Police Department. Okay.
The police arrived in short time. Jamie on the phone had told them it was a home invasion, a robbery. They were not expecting what they found, which was a bloodbath of the highest order. A horror movie. Jamie was covered in blood, cuts, lacerations, her jaw fractured, where her foot was almost gone. She couldn't speak by this point. If she passed out before calling, she certainly would have died. Kimberly was in the bed, unrecognizable, skull opened up, eye socket cracked. Stab wounds? It'd be easier to say where they weren't at this point.
And found 11-year-old Jaime Cates.
I saw a young girl laying on the floor. I observed that she was completely covered in blood from her head to her toe. I observed that she had major injuries and major trauma, to include lacerations to her face, extremities, as well as I observed that part of her foot was missing.
Sergeant Furlong says Jamie was trying to scream, but nothing was coming out of her mouth.
I got close to her. I told her that I was a police officer, I was there to help. She then said in a whisper while shaking that she thought her mommy was dead.
Not a whole lot could prepare the EMTs and investigators for this. David Cates, husband and father, he'd been out of town on business that particular night, and now he was rushing back. In the meantime, the four people that had done this were very busy trying to cover their tracks and make any leads to them as foggy as possible. William Marks they dropped off at home, while the three others, Stephen Spader, Christopher Gribble, and Quinn Glover, went to another friend's house at about 5:30 a.m. His name was Autumn Savoy, and he was supposed to be their alibi for the night. Yeah, we were just at a sleepover for the night, you know yourself. We never left the house. They immediately told Autumn where they had been and what they had done. Boasting, actually, what they had been and done would be more accurate. Relishing the details of this horrific home invasion. They showed Autumn the weapons they'd used. They showed him the bag filled with bloody clothing they had taken off. They actually wanted to burn that bag of clothing in Autumn's backyard, but he said, F no. And so they ended up throwing it in the Nashua River. It was actually Autumn who disposed of that bag of evidence. I'm not really too sure why he did, because that's a hell of a crime to to involve yourself in, but he went down with a bag, he threw it in the river, the bag floated. But he was like, sure. He saw the bag of evidence floating down the river, he's sure. Be grand. Off he went. Following that, the same morning after, they went for some food. Then they went to pawn some of the items they had stolen, and they got a whopping 130 bucks. Yippee. This was at the mall, right? And they were actually questioned because they were acting suspicious, and there had recently been a couple of burglaries in the area, but the police let them go. After that, Stephen and Christopher, they went to another friend's house, a Kyle Fenton. They did the exact same thing they did at Autumn's. They were yapping away to Kyle about, hey, this is what we did last night. You'll never guess, right? Going into all the details of the brutal attack on Kimberly and on Jaime. Kyle, though, was not the same as Autumn. He was not best pleased. Hearing this, he was a bit like, it's fucked up. After they left, he then went online to see if they were bullshitting him or not. And it turned out they weren't bullshitting him at all. And he told his mother what they had just told him. She then told the police. See, they wanted to go around covering their tracks. They had alibis, evidence removal. But they still went around telling anyone who would listen what they had just done. They couldn't keep it to themselves. Psychos. That's how long their rampage lasted, right? A couple of hours. And then shortly after they talked to Kyle, it got to the point where they were like, you know what, maybe we should actually not tell this to everybody. Maybe we should keep this, kind of on the hush. The weapons, the murder weapons they still had, they used bleach and they used alcohol to clean them, and they buried the weapons in the forest along with some of the other items they hadn't pawned from the Cates home yet. Then after that, they went back to Autumn's and started reading about the Trill kills, whatever they had just done on the internet, reading all the deets about this horrific attack. They saw that Kimberly was dead and that Jaime had survived, at which point Stephen Spader said, "At least I killed my bitch," said the bitch. At this point, the police were aware of what they had been saying from Kyle and his mother's report. So Christopher Gribble, Stephen Spader, and Autumn Savoy were interviewed by the police. Autumn, he stuck with the alibi. He was the alibi for the night. For like 5 seconds before he was like, okay, this is what they told me. When Stephen Spader was interviewed, he said, I don't know who committed these horrific acts against Kimberly and Jaime, but whoever did, sick bastard. They should get the death penalty. No judge, no jury, straight to execution. Then he asked for an attorney. Christopher Gribble, on the other hand, he denied any knowledge of the home invasion. But after a few hours, the 19-year-old said, "Get out your tape recorder. I have a story for you."
Okay, today is October 5th, 2009. The time is approximately 18:45. With me is Christopher Gribble. Is it true that you've come to me and you told me you'd like to talk again?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Steve and I are very similar. Stephen Spader. Both of us grew up with problems in our families. Technically, we're both sociopaths, legally, by neuropsychologists' declaration. I do not use that as an excuse. I just thought I'd let you know.
No, that's important facts to know.
He said, yeah, we're just going to go in there, grab some stuff. If anybody's there, we're going to kill them, have some fun. I agreed. The mom sat up in the bed, started asking who was there, what was going on, tried to turn on the lamp and it didn't turn on.
Yep.
And when she did that, Steve started hacking at the bed with a machete. I was controlled, but I didn't really feel much of anything.
Yep. Okay.
I thought I would, but I didn't. Quinn had the good sense to go turn the breakers back on and the lights went on.
Yep.
The mom was obviously not going to make it. The girl I was pretty sure wasn't going to. She was completely out. There was blood all over the place.
He told the police that him and Stephen were sociopaths, and that they'd wanted to kill someone for a long time. The most chilling facet of his confession, though, was really two things, when he said he was disappointed about two things. One was, he said after the attack, he said he felt nothing. He didn't get the rush he was expecting and hoping for. After they did what they did, he said he just felt nothing at all. So if that's not monster material, I don't know what is. The other disappointment was that he didn't get to kill Jaime.
Tom, we're live on the banks of the Nashua River, where prosecutors say somewhere in this area, Autumn Savoy helped dispose of evidence related to the Mont Vernon murder. Today in court, Savoy said he was just trying to do what his friends wanted him to do.
Quinn Glover and William Marks were both rounded up too. Quinn stuck to the alibi story and asked for a lawyer. William Marks said he was involved in the burglary, but not the murder. Stephen Spader and Christopher Gribble were charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and attempted murder, as well as witness tampering and burglary. They were held in prison without bail, awaiting trial.
Disturbing new details emerging in the Mont Vernon murder case. News 9 has obtained court documents filed by prosecutors detailing an alleged brotherhood between the suspects in last October's brutal killing of Kimberly Cates. In it, prosecutors highlight what they call the disciples of destruction and allege the crimes committed on the morning of October 4th, 2009 were part of an initiation.
William was charged with conspiracy to commit murder, and accomplice to first-degree assault and burglary. Quinn was charged with conspiracy to commit burglary, and robbery. Both of them made deals with state prosecutors for a lesser sentence, in return for testimony against Stephen and Christopher, William getting 30 to 60 years, and Quinn getting 20 to 40.
Billy Marks, looking pale and thin, looks back briefly at his father as he prepares to be sentenced for his role in the murder of Kimberly Cates. Judge Abramson looks disgusted as she addresses the 19-year-old.
You planned and you watched and you celebrated.
Glover addressed the judge with the only apology the Cates family has heard in this courtroom.
But every morsel of food that I eat, every breath of air that I take, every beat of my heart, I think of what we have done. I know that there is nothing that I can do that will ever atone for my terrible actions.
So that's how it all went down, and in the meantime the police were looking for hard evidence. All 4 of their houses were searched. They found swords, they found axes, they found knives hidden inside teddy bears. Remember that bag that floated down the river? Well, that was swiftly recovered. Inside was all the bloody clothing, all the bloody evidence. A red sweatshirt that read, "This is Steve's sweatshirt. Steve, who is awesome," on it, and also socks with C. Gribble on them. Of all the things to wear to a home invasion, maybe don't wear the things that have your actual name on them.
And this is what the defendant used against both of his victims.
Handling a machete almost as often as he used the word merciless, New Hampshire Assistant Attorney General Peter Hinckley outlined what the state believes Stephen Spader did the night Kimberly Cates was murdered and her then 11-year-old daughter Jaime was severely wounded. As for the defendant, he sat quietly, often with his hands forming a steeple, for instance, as the prosecution talked about the motive.
Break in and kill whoever was inside. For fun, for kicks.
Stephen Spader went on trial in November 2010 and he pleaded not guilty to all charges. Throughout the trial, he was completely silent, showing nothing, blank-faced. Except one time when he joked to his attorney about having the jury sing him happy birthday. Stephen had antisocial personality traits, and in 2008 he spent a brief period in a psychiatric hospital. Twice, actually, after being diagnosed with depression and bipolar disorder. Stephen's parents were worried, his friends were worried. He was growing darker and darker. Self-harm, drugs, his parents sent him to different treatment centres, all costing a pretty penny, to no avail, and he was eventually kicked out of school. He also had 2 violent incidents with his parents when police had to be called.
Referring to Mr. Spader, do you see him here in the courtroom?
I do, sir.
Please point him out and identify an article of clothes that he's wearing.
To the right of the table, in the blue suit.
Quinn would take the stand, telling how Stephen had been like this for a while, how he had been fixated on violence, spoke of it as often as he could. About a year before the attack, the fantasies just weren't enough, and he began to speak more and more about what he would do and how he would consume parts of the victims.
He talked about eating people, roasting people, putting heads on stakes, making scenes for the press.
Then it became a reality he was foisting upon the disciples of destruction, their little gang. Quinn told that while the attacks were going on, he covered his ears and walked outside to stop the screaming. His testimony was chilling, as was William Marks. William had tried to back out of the entire thing, but Stephen sent him a text saying, "Are you fucking kidding me? Billy, dude, if you're not back here in 20, we're gonna have problems for real."
You stood in that doorway and you watched them both attack those people, didn't you?
Yes.
Did you once, just once, try and stop them?
No.
Did you try and help him or Jamie once?
No.
I mean, this is their testimony though, and to be honest, I couldn't really give a shite, right? They both went along with the entire thing. They weren't, they're not victims here in any way, shape, or form. It also came out that William Marks and his dad had been talking about selling their story for a lump sum, so obviously he wasn't feeling too bad about the whole thing. He had dollar signs in his eyes. And one final thing about William and Quinn, right? William said Quinn had gone to the circuit breaker after the attacks. He had turned the power back on so they could see what they had done. They didn't do anything during the attacks, they just watched in horror. And sure, Quinn had said he was so horrified by what he was witnessing, he had walked outside and covered his ears. But the police would find on the circuit breaker a substance that appeared to be blood. If it was blood and Quinn didn't attack anyone, how'd it get there? Did they sell out their friends for a lesser sentence? Because both Stephen and Christopher would say, they wouldn't really tell anything about what had happened. They were in a bloodlust frenzy against these two defenseless sleeping people anyway. Stephen bragged about his crimes while in jail. He wrote poems about the home invasion. And I hope he is still bragging because he was found guilty beyond guilty. Didn't need a whole lot against him when he was proud of what he had done. He was sentenced to life without parole.
This isn't somebody who's going to grow out of his problems. His problem is he is a psychopath. That's what he is. It's not a phase. It's not something that can be treated. It's who he is, and he acts in response to who he is.
Spader was 17 when he led 3 other men on a violent home invasion in Mont Vernon in 2009 that killed Kimberly and seriously injured her daughter Jamie. That victim, now 14, sat in the front row of the court with her father, David Cates. Saying he didn't want to slip by on a technicality, Spader instructed his lawyers not to present a defense and had them only read a letter of apology into the record.
To the Cates family, I know my words have no meaning, but I am truly sorry.
David actually said he found it insulting what he had to say.
Next up was Christopher Gribble. His plan was quite different from Stephen's. Stephen's plan was basically just say nothing. Christopher was going with the old not guilty insanity.
When were you legally insane?
When was I legally insane? Well, I think technically I'm legally insane now is what my defense is. That I am...
Right now?
Yes.
You're a careful criminal, right?
Yes.
At a pre-trial competency hearing, he told the judge he was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. He had been taking Prozac, but had stopped and had not been receiving any treatment at the time of the attacks. He would also say he was abused when he was young, both physically and emotionally.
I'd get to the point at night where I just really wanted to sneak in my dad's bedroom, pull the gun out and shoot myself in the head, because I just wanted it to end.
Basically trying to grab anything he could to lessen his own responsibility, really.
In Gribble's version, Spader is clearly the ringleader, but Gribble seemed happy to comply with his orders during the killing.
At some point, Steve said, finish him off. He threw a pillow onto the mom's face, because she was still making, like, kind of burbling, not really breathing, but, like, raspy burbling noises.
You're saying you're legally insane.
I'm saying as my defense, yes.
Do you not believe in your defense?
I do believe in my defense.
So you're saying you were legally insane?
Yes.
Christopher was described as a weirdo by those around him. He was not someone who could read situations. He made sexual advances on people who did not want them. He had been to counselors, he had been on medication, but when he renewed his friendship with Stephen Spader, they had been friends in the Boy Scouts when they were younger, well, that's when things got to what they got to.
You're a dangerous guy, right?
I could be considered dangerous, yes.
People in the jail have no idea how dangerous you are.
No, they don't. I smile because it's funny that all the people in there have no idea who they're messing with.
They may not, but you'd agree the Cates family certainly knows how dangerous you are, right?
Well, yes.
You made sure of that, right?
During his trial, his therapist testified he did not have mental illness, but he did have some traits, and he was on the road, to it for want of a better word.
I was informed that he had thoughts of wanting to kill his parents.
Dr. Grace Tallarico said Gribble also expressed concern he could become a serial rapist, and she sent him for in-depth psychological testing. Prosecutors argued Gribble was never formally diagnosed with any disorder and clearly comprehended that killing was legally and morally wrong.
He didn't have enough to be properly diagnosed with any of these disorders he was claiming he had. I suppose it doesn't mean he didn't have them, but it also seemed like he was quite aware of what he was doing.
Legally, it is possible, if I were sent to the secure psychiatric unit, that I could get out again. I don't think it's probable at all. I think the possibility is one of those sort of 1,000,000 to 1 sort of things. But I know it's possible. And if I did get out, I think it is possible that I could kill again.
A witness from jail would testify that Christopher was hoping to be out of prison in 6 years. That's including good behavior by using the insanity defense.
Don't like it in jail and you do want to get out, right?
That would be nice, yes.
He used it, and it didn't work.
Through these accounts, I have heard my wife's last breath. I have listened to my child's screams. I have watched as Jamie's perfect little body was mutilated and tortured.
Mr. Cates said while Kimberly Cates was a fighter full of life, she died with the thought her daughter never made it.
In the last moments of her life, the thought of her daughter dying next to her was more than she could bear.
I am not going to go into the bottomless aggravating factors that exist in this case, but I believe the record will thoroughly support my belief that infinity is not enough jail time for you. Accordingly, you are sentenced on the remaining convictions to the maximum penalty allowed by law to be served consecutively.
He was found to be sane and he was sentenced to life without parole. Christopher never showed any remorse or guilt. He was feeling sorry for himself though, and complaining about his quality of life in jail. Well dude, buckle up. You gotta look at the bright side of things, because you're gonna be looking at those 4 walls for quite some time. All 4 still remain in jail to this day. As for Autumn, he pleaded guilty to hiding evidence and conspiracy. He was sentenced to 5 to 12 years and was paroled in 2015. This case really has nothing good coming out of it from any end, except for the Kimberly L. Cates Memorial Scholarship awarded to high school seniors from the area. Jaime Cates is doing well, studying public health and living a full life, which is great to see.
Just living every day like it's the last, right?
And there you have it, an early October nightmare. It seems very fitting it happened not far from Halloween, because it's a true horror. 4 teens, 2 pure devils, killers, who just wanted to do it and nothing would stop them. I mean, the fact that Christopher was disappointed after he did it because he felt nothing is probably one of the scariest parts of this whole story, at all. They didn't need Halloween costumes to be monsters. There you have it. Sleep well. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate you taking the time to be here with me. It means so much to me. So thanks again. And as always, please check out Twitter, Instagram, where there's other bits and bobs from that chapter, which is me. Oh, goddamn it. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and it means so much to me. So as always, please take care of yourselves, because I love you. Mike out.